life your heart, bless everything that's grown. Fear not a loving, all this world's your own. Make rich the soil, but once the seed is sown, seek freedom, don't linger, go on alone. Walk like a man, even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all turn home, the goal still awaits you. Go on alone, go on alone, go on alone.
Good morning again. Good morning to the yogis who materialized in the dark. This week, this reading is from Rays of the One Light, Parallel Commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita. This week, which is week 52, is entitled The Divine Ascension. The Divine Ascension. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 14, we read, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. What is this I when spoken by a master who has conquered every vestige of ego consciousness? Therein lies the mystery of true scriptural teaching. That I is no I. That I that is no I. Does it even exist? In what way is it different from the consciousness that animates other human beings? Jesus was not saying, look at me, don't look at other masters. He was saying, rather, look at the divine self that is the essence of who you are, your very self. You are that I. No man cometh unto the divine consciousness except by first recognizing his own intrinsic divinity, hidden behind his delusive ego. The Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter states, O son of Pritha Arjuna, in whatever way people accept me, in that same way do I appear to them. For all men in some way pursue the path to me. Meditate on the divine incarnations. Their lives and the consciousness animating them will be your stairway to the infinite. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. It's such a short reading and such a beautiful reading. In fact, what we're going to do a little bit later related to all of this is we'll go through a ceremony called the Festival of Light, which Swamiji wrote and many of you know. And I'll talk a little bit about it a little bit later, but for that reason I will just say a few words about this reading and then we'll get into the festival. It's such a gift to us that these great masters come and bring their blessings to earth. And it's important to remember that they come, as the reading implies, but also as Yoganandaji and Swamiji have stated, of course they don't come to show us how great they are. It isn't as if Christ and Krishna and Buddha were up in heaven kind of feeling a little bit sad and a little insecure, so they thought, well, let me go to earth, because on earth I'm big shot, so everyone will look at me and bow, and then I'll feel good. It's not for their need that they come. They come for us. And on one level, they do have a world mission, that they come to uplift the world generally. And we know the famous and oft quoted and one of the favorite statements of the Gita is that whenever virtue declines and vice is predominating, then I incarnate myself on earth to punish evil and to set virtue back on its throne again. It's important to remember that Krishna says to punish evil, not evildoers, but evil. Because the world gets out of balance too far in one way, and so God has to come and bring it back the other way. And yet, and therefore, yes, there's a world mission, that the world needs help generally. There's also a world mission in the sense that this world goes through different cycles, different yugas, and each one of them has its own characteristic. This is a much bigger topic, obviously, but I will not go into that further except to say there are different needs at different times. And so, on the one hand, Yoganandaji came and said, he emphasized praying to Divine Mother, because there was a lot of prayer to Heavenly Father, but he said the Mother is closer than the Father, because the Father, at least in the sort of abstract or perfect principle, tends to go by law, and if you have done that which is wrong, then that's it. You have to take the punishment. And whereas the father will say, upstairs to your room, no food. And the mother will knock on the door and say, no food, as she slips dosa under the door. No food. Konjam. And so there's that sense of forgiveness, that sense of, look, I'm your child, what am I supposed to do? When we're teaching a young child, even as a father, even as an uncle, as a friend, we don't yell at the child every time it makes a mistake. We say, well, you're learning. That's what you're here for. We don't expect you to be born and know calculus and know all these things. And it's interesting, though, how Master put it in terms of the cultural differences. These, of course, are, themes and somewhat, you can say, stereotypes rather than actual. I mean, every person is themselves. But still, in one of his talks, he said, you can take a soul. You can have an American boy, have him born and raised in India, and he will be very Indian. He will be shy, and he will be sweet, and he will be, all these kinds of gentle and these things. He said, you can take an Indian boy and have him raised in America, and he will like apple pie, and he will say, okay, and go ahead, and things like that. I just thought it's so funny. I never would think that that you would think of Americans as saying, okay, and go ahead. But Master was referring to that sort of, executive kind of, important energy. That's one thing that Swamiji said he found. He was an American, but he was born in Romania. And so Romania was a very sort of humble country, you could say, at that time. It was even many, many years behind the modern age. And when it was happy to be so, it was fine. And he said these other friends, these families from America would come, and the kids would be walking around talking very important and saying, I know this thing, and I was a part of that thing. And Swamiji wondered, what's so important about being important? And so you see, every culture has something to learn from the other and something of itself to shed, to come to balance. That's all it is. So, going back, the Masters come, the divine incarnations come with a world mission, yes. They also come to correct misunderstandings or to emphasize a new aspect of truth that's needed. As I was saying, Yoganandaji emphasized Divine Mother because the mother is closer than the father. Now, where did this concept of father come from? Well, certainly it's been throughout India. I mean, in fact, in when I first came, not when I first came to India, but when I spoke to one of my relatives in Kerala, he said to me, and I was new to religion and everything, he said, in India you will see so many gods, but everyone knows that there's really only one God. But these are all different forms. And I thought, I never heard that before. I have to think about that. It's pretty cosmic, it's pretty sophisticated philosophically, you could say. This is something. And it's like he said, everybody knows. And I thought, well, I've come from a place where everybody doesn't know that. And it made me curious. And again, it was impressive. That's the feeling I had. I was impressed. I said, this is something to learn. So again, I'm trying to keep this short, but there's so many fun little asides. There was one man who asked, we had a friend, Dr. Aditya, some of you know, he was racing, I think, to pick someone up at the airport who he was late to meet. And a cop found him, stopped him, pulled him over. This was in Pune. And the cop came up to him, and it was around Ganesh Chatterjee. And he said, where are you going? He said, I'm so sorry, officer, that, I'm late to meet a friend at the airport. And he saw that Dr. Aditya was all dressed in yellow, and so he said, so you're a monk. So tell me, do you worship Ganesha? And he said, absolutely, which is true. He wasn't saying it because whatever the police say, you say yes. No, he said, yes, absolutely. And we see actually all these different manifestations of God. Ganesha, Shiva, and Parvati, they're all aspects of the same one God. And the police officer said, thank you, sir. You've helped me to see that everything is Ganesha. And Ganesha is the best God. Thank you very much. So we let him go. But in any case, we have to sort of expand from where we are. But still, where did this concept of Heavenly Father come from? In the West, it came from Jesus, in the sense that Jesus emphasized Heavenly Father. Now, why? Or rather, was Yoganandaji saying, well, what Jesus was saying about Heavenly Father, Vandam, we want Divine Mother. He wasn't saying it like that, but then what was Christ coming? Jesus Christ coming to bring Father, because at that time, in the Jewish religion, which is what he was born into and addressing, the concept of Father was of a judge, a disinterested, unattached, impersonal judge. You do it right, you're allowed to continue. You do it wrong, finished. That's it. And Jesus said, this God is your own Father. Doesn't your Father care about you? Isn't he going to forgive you? Isn't he going to take a personal interest in what you're doing? Isn't it in a way his own responsibility to make sure you do the right thing? Don't think of him as just a judge or a traffic cop. He is your own Father. So again, he was bringing an emphasis that was needed at that time. And so it's never a question of this way was wrong. And though maybe in that religion you needed the concept of judge because it's what would get you to behave. Just like, maybe not. I don't want to face the judge's anger. So again, everything has its need. But at a certain time we get used to thinking in a certain way and we take it too far. Because judges can be compassionate, but if we just get caught up in law, then we can get into, this is the rule, you broke it, then I get to feel superior because I haven't yet broken it. And then the father aspect is needed, but then the mother aspect is needed. And also, what's beyond the mother? Again, it's not a competition, but Master mentioned that in some ways the highest relationship you can have with God is that of friend, as Arjuna had with Krishna. And why? He said, because in friendship, there is no expectation. You have, in a certain way, a right to say to your mother, Amma, what are you doing? You never hear someone say, Amma, please, if it's not so much trouble, could you just make me a small dosa, just a chinnakuti one, just because I'm feeling, they're just... like baby birds, they don't... And there's like, hey, it's your job to put something in this mouth. Now again, it's better not to have that attitude. So it would be okay to be a little nice and polite, actually. But still, the point is, there's an expectation. And it goes both ways. After all, you're my child. I've given you 15,000 dosas over the course of your lifetime. And now, you're going to marry this person in exchange. Well, you should have thought of that before you accepted all those dosas. This is the bargain. So that expectation that way goes both ways. In friendship, there's no expectation. There's no obligation in friendship. We come together of our own free will. And we give, and we ought to give, without expectation of return. There's a freedom in that way. Of course, that's divine friendship, and our human friendships can express different levels of that. But when it's a friendship or any kind of relationship that's centered in God, then it works. I know that I am expressing love to God through you, we think. I know that if I receive love from you, it's God sending it. And we don't look to that individual as the source of the love. Because in this world, Mother, they do not know how to love me. And again, it goes both ways. I mean, just be like, yeah, no kidding, you're telling me. Yeah, fine. But then, again, remember our own role in how we are trying to love more perfectly. But when it's rooted in truth, which is God, the truth of love, the only love is divine love, expressed on different wavelengths. Master said, in the physical universe, divine love is expressed as the law of gravity. Isn't that sweet? Thinking of the sun pulling the planets, holding them in place, things being drawn together through the magnetism, which gravity in a way you can think of also as magnetism, but the attraction of love. So it's beautiful to see it's on all levels. But on the other hand, as I was saying, the incarnations, the divine incarnations, they come to earth to help the earth, but they also come to help each one of us, individually, personally. Babaji said when he was meeting Lahiri Mahashaya for the first time, he said, the cries of worldly men and women have not gone unheard by the divine. They've not gone unheard. And so, in response to that, I want you to bring this technique of Kriya Yoga back into the world. That was that particular divine gift to the world, the divine dispensation, the mission of those two avatars, and of course the line of avatars here. But it was in response to our call. So it's important to remember that your call matters. And if we didn't call, then God would say, okay, well, when you're ready. And then, when we're not looking, He turns the heat up a little bit just to help make the call come sooner. And then suddenly, help! Okay, yes, yes. And Babaji, ready? Okay, go. You see? But it's in response to our call. He cares. She cares. They care. And so that it's not that we're sort of desperate prisoners and finally the guard lets us out into the play area for a while. It's that we are God's own children. We are, again, and the avatars too, remember, as great as they are and as clear expressions as they are of the divine, they followed that same winding path of soul evolution that we're on. They're not sort of, created as super people that didn't have to go through LKG and all this like we do. They did LKG many times. Yoganandaji said he could remember being a diamond. Don't ask me to explain because I can't. I mean, how does a diamond die? How does a diamond reincarnate? Was it an emerald? You just can't. I have a feeling the form stays the same, but different souls go in and out of it. Anyway, makes you wonder too when you get old antique jewelry, like, someone in there? So, in fact, it is true actually, if you do get antique gems, there's a few little purification things you can do for them for old jewelry, just to kind of clear whatever energy and infuse it with energy. It's a very side, small topic, but in case that ever comes up, it's something to think about, because sometimes there can be, anyway. Like I said, I'm going to keep it short. But I just want to emphasize that also the divine incarnations come for you. They come specifically for you yourself. They say, oh, let's see, what year is it? 2014. Okay, that's right, Bhaskar's there, let's go. It's very personal, it's very individual. And they're saying, come, get free, just like we did. Have you ever visited your old school, like you went back to your high school after you graduated? It's the same thing. That's what they're doing. They're walking around, I remember, chemistry, kashtam, but no problem, you'll get through it. And when you see them visiting your old school, you say, okay, that's me. 2 more years, and then I get to be like that in school. And this school, it takes a little bit longer. But still, we shouldn't think in those terms. We should think in terms of, that's where I'm going, that's where I want to go. And I just wanted to add one little thought about this concept of, they are saying, what I am is what you are. That this is your own self, as was said in the reading, that you are seeking. And so, but what does that mean? I mean, we can understand it philosophically, that okay, well, if there's one sort of big self and we're all aspects of that self, and okay, that's fine. And if their self is united to all and I am a part of all, then I am united to them but not fully aware. Okay, fine. We can all make sense, or you can make sense of it logically. But what does it feel like? When I say I'm an aspect of every self, it takes a while to feel, and then do I have to feel the feelings of every self? And if you've ever felt the feelings of someone else, it's just like, look, I'll have my own feelings, thank you very much, that's hard enough to work with. But what it feels like to be a part of yourself, or what are we seeking to feel? Another way to think of it is we want to feel at home. We are seeking our home. When you're home, you're safe. This is the ideal home. I don't mean necessarily where you live or wherever it is. But when we know that feeling of home, whether it's our village, whether it's our parents' house that doesn't even exist anymore, whether it's where we live now, if we had a tough childhood and finally have sort of a stable home, but we know that feeling of, I'm welcome. If everything rejects me, I have a place to go. I have a place where I have the key to the door, and when I open it, there's people inside smiling who are saying, Banga, Banga. And that I can, in a certain way, I can rest. And Swami Kriyananda wrote a song, home is a green hill, home is a wind, blowing something, which I'll say, far, far away. And you were already given the answer by one of the bright students in the class. No, I'm kidding. I was a school teacher for many years, so I have that, 7 times 8 is, don't say it, 56, don't say it. So anyway, it's okay. I didn't warn her. So, home is a green hill, home is a wind blowing, betrayal, far, far away. Isn't it interesting that he picked that as what home heals? Because he could have said, home is a green hill, home is a wind, blowing pain, far, far away, blowing sadness, blowing hunger, blowing illness, any of these things. But what hurts in some way the heart the most is betrayal. And don't worry, I'm not going on a whole new tangent on betrayal. But if you've ever felt betrayed by a friend, by a family member, you realize that it even in a way threatens your feeling of home, especially if it's a family member, because I'm at home and you're dangerous and I have nowhere to go because this is where I live, so I can't get anywhere. So that feeling of home heals betrayal. And even if we've never been betrayed by a person, we get betrayed all the time by our own expectations of this world. Because after all, this world eventually will be perfect and friendly and kind and gentle, and I will be a success in everything I do. Well, it's not the way this world is set up. Why? It's because our home is not here. Swamiji and Master were out at the lake shrine in 1950, helping to make it into a beautiful thing with many other monks, and it was a beautiful area. But in the middle of all of this beauty, there were little gnats, little tiny bugs that were flying in their eyes and in their noses and so on, like you see here. But these gnats you can't even really see them. They're just like dots, but they just get you. And Swamiji said, Master, why in all of this beauty should there have to be these bugs just ruining it, the experience? And Master said, well, that's God's way of keeping us all moving towards Him. And in another context, he said, it's just a reminder that this world is not our home. So therefore, it isn't going to be perfect. And also, if God is our home, if heaven, the divine, and so on is our home, then when we seek our home in the wrong way or in the wrong place, in fact, that's the very thing that ends up betraying us. Let me explain that. Master Swamiji said once that if we get fixated on some particular thing, which can also be a relationship or an idea, not just an object, God uses that very thing to betray us. Not out of anger or punishment or anything, but because we're becoming attached in a false way. And so you could say even we're sort of karmically drawing the lesson to realize, oops, actually that's not the way to freedom. So in that way, sometimes if we go through a healing or a betrayal or a disappointed expectation, we can remember, I was too focused, and Divine Mother had to heal me. She had to help me learn. Sometimes the lessons can be brutal. I'm not trying to say in every situation we can go, oh yeah, I'm just learning. Even Master said, we have to go by God's laws, and pretty bad laws they are too. He said, if you put your hand in the fire, God will not say, I love you. He will burn you. He said, but He doesn't want you to put your hand in the fire. Why do you try the fire? So he acknowledged, and he fought with God all the time. Why do you force people to learn through suffering? And he was always in a fight every day, he said, about God. He said, there's no misunderstanding between us, but still I fight with Him all the time. Why does it have to be through suffering? But we know why it has to be through suffering. Because sometimes it's the only way He can get our attention. When everything is going well, do we always pray to God, thank you for this, thank you for that? We should. Let's try. We can. And if we do, it helps us when things are difficult. But there was a time when I was trying out astrological readings. I was learning about astrology. I wasn't trying to give readings, but people hearing or asking that I would say some too many things like, oh, it's the fifth house and the Saturn, or it's good. Oh, can you look at my chart? Anybody who said to me, can you look at my chart, always had, well, you know, Shani is here doing this right now in the sky, not their birth chart, but you know, the planets go through the sky. So everybody who asked me, could you look at this, was being squeezed by Saturn. No one was coming saying, you know, everything's going so wonderfully. I'm having every success. I'm healthy as anything. Could you explain why? Who cares? You know? And then it's kind of like, you know, and I think I might have something to do with it after all. You know, I pray. So yeah, it's natural that I would have this wonderful success. I mean, we start to take credit for it, or the ego does. So anyway, it's just to say that when there's a squeeze, help. And so that's why it comes through suffering. It doesn't come only through suffering. And here's another point. Suppose we didn't have the suffering. Then what would happen at the end of life? We could more or less be just exactly where we started. No progress, no learning. What was the point of the incarnation? Just to kind of drift through and have a vacation? You see people sometimes who are in that kind of a mode. Just, you know, I needed a break. So I'm going to have some wealth and some health and some happy relationships and just enjoy this earth, and then I'll try next time for some serious work. But you don't always know what they've been through before. I don't say it in a judgmental way at all. But sometimes I remember seeing one particular chart, astrological chart of someone, and it was like, gosh. And in fact, it wasn't someone, it was someone, they were entering a relationship with someone and said, can you look at that person's chart and tell me? And it was like, what do I say? And I just thought, wow, we had like 5 planets in one place, and it was all kind of difficult. And again, that could be fine. I'm not getting into anything around judgment of charts. But I didn't know what to say that, could be very interesting. And I showed it to Dharmini, and she also had looked at some astrology too. Astrology is just a way of looking at karma. It's not that it has any inherent fascination or power of its own. And so it's just that, as one astrologer friend that we have said, an astrologer is a handicapped psychic. Because he can't just read the karma directly. He has to look at this paper and these dots, and then that helps him to read the karma. But it's the same karma. But anyway, so she looked at this chart. She said it's a devotee's chart. And we thought, of course. Of course it's a devotee's chart. Maybe that's the one area that this devotee wanted, and it was a devotee, he was, to focus on in this life. Maybe this sort of all this energy together creates tension, which forces us to seek to relieve the tension through learning, through understanding, through healing. And so if that's the case, just like the affirmation said, all that comes, I will see good in everything. It means that suffering is good too. Again, I say it with the asterisk, that if you're going through very difficult suffering right now over a big tragedy, I'm not trying to say, well, skip lightly over it. We have to pass through these things. And sometimes, for example, grief takes its own time and can't be rushed. So having said that, though, I can also say that the greatest growth I've experienced in my life has come from the greatest suffering. And that suffering led me to understanding, not, well, now I understand, you can't trust anybody. That's not understanding. It helped me understand. It helped me understand where I was going wrong. And in almost all cases, it was because I had a false expectation of the situation, and then I felt betrayed. And then when I understood my own expectation, and again, is it saying I should have a home and that expectation is betrayed? No, we seek a home because we have a home. You are entitled to be in your home. You have a right to your home. You have a home. It's waiting for you. It may not be here. It may not even be expressed anywhere here. Remember, you may have said to God, God, I want to finish. God comes to you and says, look, there's this much karma. You're scheduled to go down now. There's this much karma. I can give it to you I can cut it up into tenths and give you 10 incarnations where you can handle it, and each one will be a little tough. Or you can just take it all in one. And what are we going to say? Just give it to me. I don't want 10 lifetimes, 10 LKGs, 10 marriages, 10 funerals. Forget it. I'll just do one. Get it over with. Why not? But then we get down here and then go, hey, that's too much. I didn't agree to this, but we did. Because we want to get it over with. Because we want to go home and be home. Now remember that too when interacting with others. Because while we're here, we can also try to channel, even silently, through our prayers, through our love for others. Personally, if you know them, or even impersonally, if it's someone in the office you're having a hard time with. You don't have to pray for that person specifically. You can. Sometimes when we do that with someone we're struggling with, it creates too much of a direct connection between us and them, and it doesn't help when we need a little bit of emotional distance. But we can pray up to God to bless them, sort of like send a beam, and I can't do it myself, but you can do it, because you see that they have some good in them somewhere. I don't see it, but you see it. I'm just kidding. But do it that way and just say, I send love. I hope you find your home. I hope you find what you're looking for. Because remember, even if what they're looking for is something that you can see isn't good for them or isn't right, once they still get it anyway, then they'll learn. Oh, well, that wasn't right, so I want this thing now and that thing and so on. So we're all in this together. We're all learning, and we're all on the journey home. And so it's a joy to feel that here too. This all came up because this morning someone expressed the feeling of, I feel that this is my home. And that when I come here to the temple, I feel at home. And then this other place is the jungle, basically. And that feeling of home is not, it's not Alwarpet, I can tell you. And it's not even this temple. It's coming closer to the Masters, coming closer to our own selves. And then that feeling of home that we've all been seeking really starts to become a living and constant reality. God bless you.